Tradesmen built America. Not policymakers or desk jockeys, but hardworking, blue-collared men and women. Join me, Roger Wakefield, on conversations with some of the nation's most successful skilled laborers. This is the Trade Talks. You've kind of taken on a special part of plumbing that a lot of plumbing companies don't do.
Yes, sir. I mean, the leak locating is a specialty, so doing that, the ground in Texas moves, our soil moves. So constantly we have it drying up and then getting spongy during the wet season. With that comes these problems where their houses start moving, they break pipes, they start leaks, or there's existing leaks that cause it to, exacerbate the situation. Either way, being able to locate this stuff is primo important to anybody that owns a house,
And to learn to do it the right way, to get the right training, to have the right equipment, the whole 9 yards, it's something that somebody can learn pretty quick, but it's a skill set that you get better and better and better at every time you do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's different scenarios. Sometimes the beams can cause the leak to echo. Sometimes it can be sleeved up and traveling to different areas. Other times the concrete's really thick and it affects the sound. So everything is definitely unique. And what you have to do is you have to learn how to regulate your air sometimes. Too much air or too little air can really affect what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. There's another thing that I like to do too that I learned when I was at this other company is I like to override the pressure a little bit sometimes, especially if there's a leak like in a corner or I think there's a cross beam there, because when you do that, just a pound or two over, it gives it a unique sound. So it's like going through and double checking for yourself. And I would rather be spot on so that way the homeowner has confidence in my abilities and wants to call me back again in the future in case there's another issue,
So, first of all, what made you decide to get into plumbing?
It was really a family member. It's kind of become a little bit of a family trade on my dad's side of the family. And he said, hey, there's an opportunity. I know that you're looking for something in life. You need to try this because it's a way of making an honest living, and you never know, you may really like it. I got into it and I noticed that this company, they specialized in leak locating especially. And I became fascinated with it because, at the end of the day, you're basically going back and playing detective. You're figuring out, the scope of the layout of the house. Somebody put that plumbing there 40, 50 years ago sometimes. And now you got to go play detective and figure out what went wrong and why, and then be able to provide a solution for the homeowner.
And I love that because I try to teach, and we'll get into it a little bit, but you're starting your own business. Mm-hmm. I try to teach plumbers that, they need to specialize in whole house water filtration, tankless water heaters, slab leaks, leak detection, leak location, things like that. Mm-hmm. I try to teach electricians, specializing in whole house GFCIs, mm-hmm. solar, wind turbines, anything that other people aren't doing. Yep. I try to teach HVAC people about whole house air filtration, mm-hmm. UV filtration, geothermal units. Become a specialist in something that most plumbing companies, electrical companies, and HVAC companies don't even do. Mm-hmm. And you're lucky because you started learning that right when you got into plumbing.
Yes, sir. Well, I started off more on like a repair truck, but then I was too curious. So I started asking questions, and eventually I got put on those other trucks where I got to see the process. And I was always taught this step by step. Just repeat the steps. If you repeat the steps, you'll get to where you need to go. It's when you skip the steps, that's when it really comes to bite you in the behind. So I've always tried to avoid that. I will do things like ask customers, hey, do you have hot spots on the floor? Because that's a dead giveaway. You already know that loop is probably one leaking. I'll ask them if they've seen water surfacing anywhere, if they've noticed damage. I'll try to give myself a heads up on clues. So that way I kind of direct myself to the problem and I can provide the solution from there.
I love that because I learned from a businessman one time. He said, anytime you do anything more than once, have a process or mm-hmm. build a process. we don't get dressed before we get out of bed. It doesn't work right.
Exactly.
And the biggest mistakes that when I had my company, biggest mistakes we ever made were where we busted a hole in the ground. And then the plumber's like, hey, it's not here. It's like,
Worst
well, did you
feeling.
go through this process? Did you do this to? No, man, look, there was water coming up right there. I was 100% sure that's where it was. And you were 100% wrong.
Exactly.
And, it takes systems, processes, and like you said, go through every step, do everything the way you're supposed to do it. I do like the fact that, look, if you can create a shortcut, I remember one of the first big leak detection jobs that I did, went over to this lady's house and said, so what makes you think you have a leak? She says, well, my dog.
Hot spot on the floor.
Uh-huh. She says, my dog is always laid in the same spot, but here lately they're laying in this other spot. And says, I happened to walk through there one time when he was outside and realized that spot's warm. That's why he's laying there.
Right.
And then I got to thinking, wait, why could it be warm?
Exactly.
You bet. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had it too where homeowners will tell me that they usually walk through their house with their house shoes. But this particular day, they walked barefoot. And that was when they're like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? And boom, that's why we were there. You know what I mean? Like clues like that, they do help you speed up the process. I always try to still go through my steps though, because sometimes you can have a leak on the hot side and on the cold side.
Absolutely.
And if you didn't test both independently, now you left something there that now you got to go back later and explain, hey, I found this. And, it's just better to go through all the steps properly the first time.
Yep.
And now you definitively know.
And I love that because that's one thing that I always did myself. You first of all, you separate the yard from the house.
Mm-hmm.
Is the meter still spinning? Okay. If so, it's in the yard.
Exactly.
Did it stop? Well, it was at the house because that's what we isolated.
Right.
Then go back to it. If it's the house, open that valve back up. Now go in the house, shut off the hot water.
Yeah. Now you're compartmentalizing everything.
You bet. And
same thing with the irrigation system at the double check, shutting that off to make sure.
Or a pool. Do they have a pool with an automatic fill valve?
Yes.
So there's a lot of different things. And I love that. Take just a second and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
My name is Kyle Norton. I'm part owner of PAC Plumbing Solutions, LLC. We just opened up February of this year. I had gotten my master's license after going through some programs to kind of expedite the process because I felt that I was confident enough to be able to do it and I had enough knowledge. So I went through the programs, I was able to pass the test, and then I had my dream of opening up a company, something that, didn't exist in my life. I had no idea that I was going to be in plumbing, 10 years ago, let alone be at the pinnacle of the highest point in the trades of being able to be owner. Like it was a very proud moment for me, to say the least. I mean,
it's a neat deal.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I mean, I cherish it till this day. I mean, I can't help but smile because I didn't do so well in college, but I was still able to accomplish something. And there's only so many of us masters in the state of Texas, and this place is huge. So, it puts you in a unique group of people. So people that don't stop, they keep on pushing, and that's my goal, is just to keep on pushing, be able to provide the best services that I can possibly provide for my clients, homeowners, business owners, whatever the case is. I put my name on whatever I do. So I want it to be correct and I want it to last, cool. And I want them to feel comfortable calling me back. Like, hey man, that guy, they actually knew what they were doing. They explained everything to us. They were very confident. They showed up, they did what they needed to do. And, I couldn't be happier. Those are the best customers to have, truly.
Completely agree. This video is sponsored by High Level. For your 30-day free trial, go to gohighlevel.com/Roger Wakefield. So you started plumbing about 10 years ago. What have you done before that?
I was actually like a bartender and server in restaurants, and that's kind of where I acquired people skills, being able to, communicate with people better, so it definitely helped all those social skills building up from those type of jobs. And then before that, I was in the concrete work. I used to do a lot of concrete flat work, grunt stuff. I mean, it was rough. I mean, I've even done a little bit of that here in Texas, and man, this heat's different than Michigan. I tell you that. It is a lot different. So
Yeah, it's a little warmer down here than it is in Michigan. But then again, Michigan gets a little colder than it gets here.
exactly, it freezes up there. So what's weird is, I mean, they must really insulate their pipes and bury them deep up there, because I never really heard about freeze breaks or
Right.
anything like that until I came to Texas. And then we had that big storm a few years ago, and it knocked everything down. And man, there was so much work going on. I remember you couldn't go to Home Depot or supply houses. They didn't have fittings, or they didn't have pipe. It was just a wild time.
You know,
So,
and the thing is, we're not built for freezes.
right,
We don't think it's ever going to happen, which, surprise, it does.
right.
And so when it doesn't, when it gets that cold and that cold for that long, we do. We have problems. And, you know, that goes into construction, and we should improve the way we're doing it and
Yeah.
change a lot of things in the code to make it even better for freeze protection. But when you were plumbing, what about plumbing? What did you enjoy about it? What made you think, look, I want to be really, really good at this?
Just being a craftsman, being able to take something old and replace it with something new and make it look nice, and make it look like it was never, nothing else was ever there. It was, this is what was there. And being able to do it in a efficient manner, and being able to do it to where it's good and it's going to stand the test of time for the homeowners, and being able to be a problem solver, I think, is really what it is, because I like puzzles. So it's kind of like that plumbing, especially when you get into, putting things together or taking them apart. Like, it just suited me. And that was really what it was. I liked that part of it, and it just grew from there, and then becoming good at it and being able to talk to homeowners and explain it, in a way that they understand what's going on. That was another part that I liked as well.
So you went to college.
Yes, sir.
What were you going to be?
I was going to be a HVAC tech. Like,
Okay.
that was what I was looking into. I got a cousin that's what he does. He's actually down here in Texas. He works for TDI, and he's more on the industrial side. So he babysits data centers, stuff like that. And I mean, I was really interested in it because, well, there's components, there's electricity, there's, if they got chilling systems, there's different types of water that's going on through there. And I thought it would be a good fit, but things changed, and I ended up leaving Michigan and came down here. And next thing you know, I was in plumbing. I was getting paid to do it, as opposed to paying to go to college to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, apprenticeships, I don't understand why more people don't take advantage of them, because at the end of the day, you don't have that school debt, and as long as you don't allow yourself to be comfortable, you keep learning and growing, it can be a very, very long career that pays really well. You just got to want to do it.
So you said keep learning. How do you keep learning right now?
I go through the code book, and I'll start reading stuff through there just to brush up on stuff. I'll keep reading the master's exam prep information. It's a big old thick book like this, and it just refreshes details for me. I'll keep looking at, new products that come out online to see what's going to be, useful in the future, to see what tools are available, and, who's doing what. I just try to keep myself interested, so that way it keeps the gears turning upstairs, like when those stop, I worry. So I just try to keep it going.
You learn to be a good tradesman, and then you get to where you're the tradesman now. You're the journeyman.
Mm-hmm.
You're the one doing things, trying to continuously get better. How is it teaching apprentices for you?
It's a little rough sometimes, because you can tell the ones that are actually dialed in, and then you can tell the ones that they need a little bit more of a push. My big rule is, when I have apprentices, I tell them they got to leave their phone in the truck. Like, I'm sorry, buddy, like that thing is a distraction, and we're trying to get this work done. the customer sees you on your phone and he's like, wait a minute, you're not paying for both of you. You see the problem here?
Mm-hmm.
Perception is a lot of things when customers see you doing things. And I mean, plumbing, HVAC work, electrical work, it's not the cheapest in the world. And you have to be respectful to people's time and their money. So I just tell them, I'm like, hey man, you got to leave that in the truck, buddy. I'm sorry. We got to be glued in so we can do this, get it done in a time and efficient manner and make sure that they're happy and we're good. So.
No, I like that. And that's a good way to do it. Most apprentices that you've worked with lately, do they get in wanting to be really good, or do they just get in because they want a job, they need a check?
The past couple, they've gotten in wanting to be good. I mean, I don't know exactly how they're doing now because I'm no longer with those companies that last time I was working with them, but they seemed like they were dialed in. I hope they kept that same mindset because that's what it takes to, have some level of success. And then you got to reset your goals. You can't just be one dimensional and set one goal, achieve it and stop. You got to treat it like a stair system and keep going. So hopefully they kept doing that. I mean, when they rode with me, they seemed dialed in, but I mean, that company, they switched helpers around so much, you just never knew who you were going to get. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes you get guys that are dialed in and sometimes you get the guys that you're like, oh man, he's going to have a tough time.
I've seen guys like that.
Yes, sir. It's unfortunate, but I mean, it exists. It's one of those things that if you want to be good, it has to come from inside. You have to want it because nobody's going to give it to you. This world is a very competitive place, and the sooner people realize that, the better off they are.
So, the companies that you worked for, did they have training programs? How did they train you, or did they train you? Did they invest in you to help make you a better plumber?
Not really per se. I had to advocate for myself. I've always been outspoken. Some people, they like that, and some people they don't. Some guys it ruffles their feathers. But for me, I knew that everything's a competition, and the only way to compete is to gain knowledge. So I forced the envelope. I was like, hey man, I've done this for a long time. I'm ready to kind of go over here and learn about this and learn about this. And that's how I was able to acquire more skills.
I like that.
You have to advocate for yourself sometimes, like it is what it is.
You opened your own company.
Yes, sir.
What areas were you wanting to specialize in?
Definitely the leak location and repairs. I mean, that's the bread and butter, but we do everything under the sun when it comes to plumbing. We do new construction, remodels, whatever it is, we can service it. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I would love to specialize just in the leak stuff, but that's one of those markets people got to see you. So that's what I'm currently working on to try to get that piece going for the business. So that way we can grow and people can know about us and we can build that retention factor and, be known in the community as a group of people that take care of business.
It's a good thing. What made you decide to step out and open your own business?
Just desire, and ambition, like I knew that I was smart enough to be able to do it. And I knew I was stubborn enough to try. So, I mean, at that point, I knew that I wanted to be able to give myself more out of life. And I wanted to be my own boss. I just never knew how that was going to work. It was just one of those deals that when I got into plumbing, I had no idea that I was just going to keep climbing. But lo and behold, the competitive edge came out of me and that fire in the belly just kept on churning. And I was like, man, I got to try, like they say that a life full of regrets is a life wasted. Right. So I'm trying not to have regrets on that one, especially,
What was the hardest thing about opening your own business? When I opened mine, it blew my mind. There were so many things that I didn't even know that I didn't know.
The hardest thing is getting the phone to ring. Like that is truly the hardest thing is getting the phone to ring, and getting your name out there, getting people to know that you exist. That's probably the hardest thing. Because I mean, anybody that gets the credentials can open up, but if you have success or not, that's a different story. That comes from so many different layers that go into the business. The marketing aspect, the inventory, the bankroll, the making sure the bills are paid, and meanwhile making sure everything else you got going on in life is good too. I mean, I have a business partner, and that's awesome because he helps a lot as well as his wife. So that is a huge, component to why we're having success, is because we're working together as a team. And I mean, he's a brilliant plumber. The guy knows so much. Ironically, he was the first plumber that I rode with when I got on my apprenticeship.
Oh, there
So
you go.
I rode for like 2.5, almost 3 years with him. And we were just doing repairs, just always going and knocking them out. Sewer tunnels, reroutes overhead, gas repairs, you name it, we were doing it. So that was where I learned the bulk of my, knowledge from. And then from his truck, I branched off and was doing the leak locating and stuff like that. And then I eventually left, once another company was offering me more money, and I was able to build even more skills over there. So, but yeah, that was kind of how it all started.
Pretty interesting. What is your favorite thing to do in plumbing?
Probably the water leak locates, because it's straightforward. You just do your steps. As long as you're doing your steps, you're gonna get to your destination. That and the sewer leak isolations. I like those two because I mean, again, it's a step-by-step process. And I mean, there's a right way to do it, and then there's a way that a lot of people do it. And I mean, you as well as I know that, you get to that point where somebody opens something up and they're like, yeah, there's a pipe there, but there's no leak.
Mm-hmm.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
So that's why there's steps to that as well. And I mean, that was probably the more challenging thing for me to learn, because being able to bounce a sewer cable up tie-ins to be able to clean that line, because there's no wall clean out over there. Oh my gosh, talk about a difficult thing to do. You got your test ball in there, you got your machine, and then you got your camera, and all the time you're trying to, oh man, that was the most interesting thing to learn. Definitely.
I remember the first time that I got in and played with flipping a test ball and making it go sideways, or, into a combination, into a Y, whatever it is. And it blows people's mind. We built the training center for Leak Pro.
Yes, sir.
And, most plumbers, whenever they think about training for leak detection, it's always the water line.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had so many people come out and look at my training for the sewer line and are like, dude, I never knew anything like this existed. It didn't, as far as I know. I just knew that if I built it, I could teach people how to use it.
Oh, yeah.
And then they get out there and look at it like, oh my God, this is so good. And it does. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's just one of those niche things. Like the leak locating is definitely a niche thing. And if you're good at it and you understand it, the possibilities for growth are there. I mean, as far as I've seen with a lot of companies, they don't train that. Like it's a niche thing. And I've talked to other plumbers in the industry about how they go about their testing. And sometimes you're shocked at what they tell you. And you're just like, oh, wow, okay, well, I'm glad I learned where I learned, because I mean, I definitely learned the proper way to do things. But I mean, there's just some out there that they don't choose to go that route for whatever reason. I'm not sure.
It blows my mind, because I talk to a lot of plumbers that they're like, yeah, we do that. It's like, really? So what kind of process y'all have? What all do y'all do? And it's almost like, yeah, we just come in and start looking around, see if we find a wet spot on the floor. So it blows my mind that a lot of these companies, that they have no training, that they have no systems and processes in place. They just hand somebody a cheap set of geophones and say, hey, here, go do slab leak detection.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're going to fail miserably when you send guys out there blind like that. I mean, you have to, whoever it is, they have to have some type of structure as to why you're doing things the way you're doing, or else you're going to end up shelling out more money than you're actually making. And I mean, at that point, now you're going to not want to mess with leak locating, because now you don't trust your guys,
or you don't trust yourself,
And I mean, like you said, you're providing the training courses now. So if nobody takes advantage of that, that's, shame on them, because this is vital information that they can keep, forever. It's trade secrets essentially, because back when I was working at the first company doing my apprenticeship, and even as an apprentice, I would talk to other companies, just being curious, and I'd ask them what they do, and they didn't do any of the steps that we were doing. And I'm just like, man, how the heck do you find a leak? I guess you're over there throwing a rock and it's there, but how are you passing the inspection? because now you still have to put it on test for inspection, or are you just covering it up?
Oh, most of them just cover it up.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's worse, you bet.
Yeah, because now you're really screwing the homeowner over, because what if they have more issues? Like you could have, one, you left money on the table, and two, their house is going to fall apart again, and they're going to be wondering, well, you said I was good, and now you have a whole different issue,
Yeah, it's funny because when we literally started specializing in, and I call it just sewer water test. I don't call it a hydrostatic test because we don't increase the pressure.
Right.
And I'm like, look, all we do is a sewer water test. And I grew my business by building relationships with real estate agents. I'd go out and talk to real estate companies. I'd ask them if I could do a lunch and learn. I would teach them about a sewer water test. I would do so many different things to help them.
Right.
And I remember, and it happened a couple of times, I got a call from a real estate agent one day. And she said, hey, Roger, y'all tested a house and said there was a leak on a sewer line. I said, yes, ma'am. Said, well, the seller had his plumber come out who specializes in sewer and water tests. And he said there's no leak.
Oh, boy.
I said, well, he's wrong.
Right.
And it wasn't even me that went out.
Right.
I said, well, he's wrong. And she says, how do you know this? I said, because my plumber that went out there was trained by me.
Right.
He follows things step by step. He's former military. Systems and procedures are important.
Exactly.
And he understands that. And she says, well, they're saying they're not a leak. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll come back out and test it again. I want the other plumbing company there. And if there's a leak in it, I want that plumbing company to pay me.
Yep.
And she's like,
okay.
I don't know that I can make that happen. I said, if they believe in their work, they'll say absolutely. And she calls me back a couple of days later. She says, look, I had to really talk to them, and I don't know if they're going to pay you or the seller of the house, but you'll get paid by them if there's a leak. But they're saying there's not. I said, I'm sure they are. So we get over there, and of course we get there early. The other guy shows up 5 minutes late. We get there early. We're already putting things together to test it. And he jumps in. He says, look, I'm testing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. And you know what?
Okay.
Do it. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to put a test ball between the two-way cleanouts. And then you're going to fill it up. And then we're going to wash the water. And he's like, okay. And he puts it in. He airs it up. And I think we help him or whatever. We've already got our equipment there.
Right.
Pumps it up. He fills it up and it starts going down. And he fills it up and it starts going down. And first of all, it's funny because we're in Texas. He pulls up in a white van with no markings, no M number, no logo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he sees me looking at the van. He says, oh, that's the new van we just picked up. And I saw it when you opened it and pulled your junk out. You've been using that van for a while.
Right.
And so anyway, and he had his daughter helping him.
Oh,
and he's like, well, she's wanting to be a plumber. I said, so is she a registered apprentice? And man, and he's like, no, she doesn't have to be yet. She's just she's doing a ride along to figure out if this is what she wants to do. And you can see by the look on her face, she's like, why are you lying?
Right.
And I said, so how many ride-alongs have you done? She said, well, I've been doing them for about 2 years now. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you're an apprentice.
And he's hurting her because he's not getting her registered.
Right.
And so anyway, he says, I don't know what's going on. He said, there's something wrong with this test ball. I said, dude, that's why you put it in the middle of the double clean out. There's no water running out the backside. So there's not anything getting past it.
Yep.
And he says, well, I want to let it out and air it up again. So go right ahead. So we let the air out, let everything drain out, put it back again, fill it up again. And at that point, my real estate agent, or the real estate agent that I represented, calls me inside, and we step in, and the homeowner's in there. And the homeowner said, is there really a leak? I said, yeah. I said, I know it. And my real estate agent says, what do I do? And I said, look, I can fix it. We can locate it. We can do all that. I said, but this goes on to him now, the seller. But, look, there's a leak. And the seller said, look, I have multiple homes. This guy does a lot of plumbing for me.
Oh, boy.
I said, I'm sorry. And we walked back outside. I said, so I got a question. I said, there's definitely a leak now. He said, yeah, it must have just appeared in the last couple of days.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
And I'm like, dude.
It takes time.
And I asked him, I said, so how do you do your leak test?
Mm-hmm.
He said, I run a camera in. I look at everything. I said, well, number one, you can't look at everything.
Mm-hmm.
I said, there's lines that are revented. There's lines that branch off that you can't get to. How do you look at everything? And he says, well, man, I run a camera through it, and there were no signs of leaks. And I'm like, that is not the right way to do a leak test.
No.
He says, I've been doing it this way for years. I said, then I wonder how many other people you've screwed over.
Yeah, exactly.
And he shut up. At that point, he's like, I'm done. He goes inside and talks to the homeowner. I said, I'm assuming y'all can tell there is a leak, right?
Right.
And I looked at him. I said, do you agree there is a slab leak under this house?
Exactly.
And he's like, yeah, there is.
Yeah. Okay. Some guys, they get away with it,
you
know, and that's why they've been doing it that way. And nobody until he met you, nobody came and, called it, and now he's like, oh, I got a problem. Mm-hmm. Now he's trying to save face and he's trying to get out of there, and yeah, I've seen that too. I mean, I have this one story. I worked with this realtor one time, and this was back when I was still a journeyman. And went there and I tested the house, and I had a very small leak. Talking about it dropped a ½ inch in 20 minutes. And then I placed the test ball at the edge of the foundation, went inside and pulled the toilet from the furthest fixture away. And like I said, I put my tape measure in there and I measured a ½ inch drop. She told me to get out of the house. She didn't want me there. I was like, oh my gosh. I called my office, let them know.
Now, is she the seller? Who is she?
She was a realtor she was a selling realtor. So
I love that.
I was just like, wow, I can't believe this. And of course the homeowner wasn't there. So it's not like I could tell anybody, that actually mattered. All I could do is tell my office and be like, hey, this is what happened just now. And, I don't ever know what happened with that, but it was a very large house. And she flat out told me, she was like, I'm not willing to take this loss. And I was like, wow, that's a very unethical move. But I got to leave, because you said you're not paying and you're not doing all this. So I'll see you later.
You're nicer than me. I'd have gone in and left her a 0-star review. I would have emailed her the report.
Right.
And said, now if you sell that house and don't report it, it's going to cost you your license. And I've done that. I have literally had real estate agents get livid at me.
Oh, yeah. Well, you affect their bottom line.
You bet.
So that's why they're mad. But I mean, there is some honest ones out there. I've met some honest ones, and then I've met some ones where I was like, oh, maybe you shouldn't be taking care of people, but I'll see you later, like, well, at that point, I wasn't owner of the company, and I told my office, and they just told me, hey, just pack up and leave. Okay. Go to the next one.
It's very important to me because I don't want to see anybody get robbed, jacked, whatever, screwed, whatever word you want to use.
Yes, sir.
Because to me, I consider what we do a profession.
Oh yeah,
and it's most like, definitely. Look, I am a professional. I do things right. And I had another one. Well, two stories there. I had one that I went out to, and we did a sewer test, and it passed, but there was a belly at the double clean out.
Oh, yeah.
And it was bad. I mean, this thing's holding like 4 inches of water.
Oof, yeah.
And we made that note in our report. Look, the sewer test passed under the house, but there is a belly, and I don't know if there was work done or whatever, but there's a belly there in the yard, and this could lead to blockages.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
And this real estate agent called me the next day, cussed me up and down, told me I was the most horrible person in the world because
you told the truth.
because, and she said, your job was to come out and tell us whether there was a leak under the house. I said, well, my job as a plumber is, if there's any issues, to just make people aware of it.
Yeah.
She said, but nobody asked you if there was a belly. Nobody asked you if that sewer line was holding water. They asked you, is it leaking under the house? I said, look, I completely agree with that. I said, but the buyer is the one who hired me.
Right.
And looking at this, the buyer needs to understand there's not a leak up under the house. There is a belly in the yard. It's in the yard. It's going to be a lot cheaper to fix. It's an easier repair. But I needed to make them aware of that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And let me correct that. She worked for the buyer.
Oh boy.
Okay. But she was upset because I told them there was a problem, period.
Right.
And I went on for about 15 minutes trying to, ma'am, look, I'm sorry, but when I see an issue, no, you don't. You were told to find out if there's a leak under the house. That's what we paid you for. And man, I just kept going on. And finally I said, ma'am, look, we're going to agree to disagree here.
That's all you can do.
I feel with my professional license, I need to make people aware of any problem. And you're correct. You asked me to come test for a leak under the house. There wasn't one, but there was an issue at the cleanhouse. So I noted that. And she said, well, you need to quit doing that, and rented and went off.
You're like, oh boy.
It is what it is. You can't help that.
Right.
She called me the next morning. She said, look, I owe you an apology. She said, my husband was sitting there listening to me. And my husband asked me, he said, look, if you were buying a house, would you want that plumber or would you want a plumber that didn't tell you the truth?
Made it real.
And he said, all of a sudden she was like, look, I was afraid I was going to lose the sale of the house or buying the house. Either way, she's going to lose her commission.
Right.
I was afraid I was going to lose that. And this has been a hard customer to work with. They've been very picky on the houses.
Right.
And I'm like, ma'am, if you look at it, I said, anytime, even if I found a leak under a house, buyers normally come to me and say, man, I hate this because we really like this house. It's like, okay, why do you hate this? And they're like, because there's a leak.
You can fix it.
There's a leak under 9 out of 10 houses in Dallas, believe it or not.
Yeah,
but now that we know it's there, it can be fixed. And that goes back to the seller now.
Right.
If you would like, I'll reach back out to the seller and say, hey, look, I'm Roger. I'm the one that found the leak here. If you'd like for us to do a sewer isolation, we can tell you exactly where it is and what the costs are. That way you're aware of it. And since it's your house, by the way, have you ever had water damage inside? Have you ever had foundation? Have you ever had this? Have you ever had this? And they're like, yeah, I have. It's like, then this may be covered.
Yep.
Okay. I speak insurance. I will talk to your insurance agent. So I got really, really good at that. It turned out to be okay. She said, look, that they've got their own plumber that they want to have fix it. But apparently there has been work done before. And you saw proof of that. And apparently it bellied or whatever. The other problem that I had with a real estate agent one time, literally, she was like you. She says, well, because she came out while we were doing a test, I said, there's definitely a leak.
Right.
And she's like, well, you have not proven that to me, so I'm going to leave now. I said, well, I'm telling you there is. She says, I have seen no proof of it. You're just telling me, and you're just here saying you're just a plumber. It's like, okay. So I made sure that when I got back to the office that I documented everything really well.
Right.
Pictures, timestamps, yada, yada, yada. And I emailed not just my customer, I emailed her, the seller's agent.
Oh boy.
Livid. She calls me the next day. I cannot believe you sent me a copy. It's like, well, now through Trek, you've been notified there is a leak and it is proof.
Right.
And if you try to sell this house to anybody else without fixing this and I find out about it, I will help them sue you.
Yep.
And she was livid.
Oh yeah. I mean, she was probably doing that to a lot of people. Yeah.
She's about the dollar.
Exactly. And unfortunately I call it, where these house flippers, they put lipstick on a pig. Yeah. Like that was the old saying, like, you go into these beautiful houses, but everything underneath is jacked up and you got to tell the homeowner, hey, I'm sorry, but this is, got a leak here. You got cracked pipe here, or you have, improperly pitched pipe and you're going to have stoppages. It might flood inside of your house if it stops up at the wrong point, These are things that you're going to want to know. And they're just like, oh my gosh, I just bought this house and they said everything was good. And I was like, well, I mean, as long as you have insurance and you spent the money on the proper riders, you'll probably be okay.
Right.
You're going to be out your deductible, available, but you know, this company, they work with the insurance. Like you said, they speak insurance, they know what they want to hear, and then we can get stuff done for you. You
Cool
know,
deal.
like that was always like one of the things that I liked best too is, you know, being able to, you know, fix somebody's issue and they're happy when I leave, you know, and they call us back if there's something else. So that's the main thing, the retention and being honest, you know, standing by your word. I mean, to me, I mean, your house is one of your biggest investments in life, you know, next to your kids, you know, so you need your house to work. You need it to not move around. You need to be able to, you know, shower, shave, cook food,
All
all
the
the
things we
necessary.
do. You bet.
Exactly. And I mean, I hear it all the time. Like people say, man, I never realized how important plumbing was until I couldn't use it at my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I understand completely. You know, you use it so much, it's just a common thing. So that's another reason that I really got into plumbing too, is because there's just endless work. You
Yeah,
know, everybody has to do those daily routine things,
absolutely.
and it all involves water. It
Yep.
all involves sewer. You know, it all involves gas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just a staple in human life, really, you know, that we have all these essential things available on demand at our house or at our place of work. So
This video is sponsored by High Level. We've partnered up with High Level because we believe this is the best all-in-one sales and marketing platform to help you grow your business. For your 30-day free trial, go to gohighlevel.com/Roger Wakefield. So when you started your company and you started it a few months back,
yes, sir.
what was your marketing plan? How do you make the phone ring? How do you get customers in the door?
The marketing plan is to build social media and a website. And I was doing a lot of research as far as trying to find like affordable options. And I wasn't finding stuff, you know, like I had built the website before through Wix.com, but I kept hearing a lot of people, they're like, hey, that just looks real plain, real plain. And I'm like, man, I'm trying, you know,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons that I haven't necessarily gone full tilt into building another website now, but I'm getting ready to, you know, because there has to be that digital footprint, you know, and then that's when I seen your video for High Level, and that's what I'm getting interested in doing. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be setting that up as soon as possible.
Cool. Good deal. It's a great product. And it's more than just a website. It's a CRM. It's phone monitoring. You know, I think one of my favorite things is if you miss a call, like you don't have your phone here with you, if your phone rings now and you don't answer it, they get a text back.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it says, hey, this is Kyle. Couldn't get your call right now. What can we do for you?
Right.
Oh, Kyle, I have a water heater problem.
Boom. Right
You know,
there's the lead.
you have not lost that customer.
Exactly.
You bet.
That's the main thing.
That's a cool deal.
I mean, advertising is so expensive too. That's one of the harder things to decide. I remember I went to a radio station and they told me it was going to be $25,000 for 6 months. I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish I had the money because I would do it. I know that some companies do that and it works well for them.
Okay, now my question, and I've reached out to the radio people before and talked to them. The Metroplex is this big,
Right.
and we work in this area.
Mm-hmm.
We work in about 5% of the Metroplex.
Right.
Okay, 10. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because we did downtown Dallas to McKinney, Addison to Garland,
Right.
stuff like that. That was our core area.
Right.
That is just a little bit of the Metroplex.
Oh yeah, this place is massive.
So why spend? Because if the package we were looking at was 50 grand,
Ooh.
and that was for a few months.
Right.
But it's like, why spend that kind of money to advertise to the entire Metroplex when all we want is this area right here?
Yeah, that's true.
And I did. I looked at it. But you told me something earlier, but before we started videoing, what was your first quote for a website?
It was $30,000, or no, it was 50,000 or something like that. It was expensive, and it wasn't even going to be something that was spectacular. It was like their baseline package was the starting rate there. And I was just like, wow. I was like, that's crazy. That's when a friend, like he actually runs his own little companies, and he had told me about this Wix.com, and that's what I was actually looking into until I discovered that you had this going on here and you were promoting it. I was like, that sounds way better. It's more, so you don't lose your leads. You know what I'm saying? Like,
bet.
you know, the callback, the text back features. Like before, I couldn't get that feature with Wix. Like they don't have that. Like you can look at the schematics and analytics on all the stuff, and you can see when people look at your website and what area. But I mean, as far as anything else, that was pretty much it. It was just a plain website, and that was all you could really do with it. So I'm actually excited about this because that's a lot better, you know?
Well, you're lucky because I spent $47,000 on eventually on websites, on new websites, on newer websites, on making the websites SEOable, and then somebody else wants to build it again.
Right.
Because, you know, we're constantly looking for that website that helps give us growth,
Exactly.
that helps get us found, that helps make the phone ring.
Yeah.
And, you know, the neat thing to me about High Level, and literally for the last 2 days, I've had 2 guys from Canada in here. I've had a guy from Vegas, and we're looking at how can we build an agency that helps tradespeople, helps a lot of different people, but trades would be my focus because that's who I talk to. And there's so many people out there that want to start out, and it's just, it's so hard to do. But literally, if you build a website right, and there's certain things that we do, but anyway, one of the guys was in here, and I was doing a call the other day with a customer, and we were looking at their LSA and how it's set up and whatnot, and went in and talked to them. And they said, and we pulled up their graph, and their LSAs have been dropping, and there were certain things that they hadn't done, and we went in and did it. And literally, I called them back 5 minutes later because there was something else I wanted to mention. And when I called back, the guy's wife was in the background and said, look, I did what you said on the LSAs. We've received 2 calls in the last 15 minutes.
Hey, right there,
It's like, you know what we do works.
Exactly.
And that's why me teaming up with Go High Level was amazing.
Yes, sir. I mean, the search engine optimization and all that stuff. Like I said, I grew up, I had friends that were big into computer programming, and they still are till this day. I wish I'd have paid a little more attention because maybe I'd have learned some of that, you know, stuff earlier on, but I'm learning now. You know, I don't want to stop learning. I want to continue to grow, and I want to have a successful business, you know, something that I can pour myself into and it actually works the way it's supposed to, you know, and it's a challenge at the same time.
Love it.
Because nothing that you do in life that's worth having is going to come easy. You know, like I've learned that so many times, you know, like it's just, it's one of those things, you know, you have to work for it, you know, nobody's going to hand it to you. So, you know, any little bit of information, any tool I can use, I'm going to be on board, you know, I'm full attention, you know, it matters. So
what's been the hardest thing after you open your business?
Hardest thing is, like I said, just, you know, having the cold calls, you know, the people calling you because they know you exist,
Right.
You know, that's the hardest thing. Like, I mean, until you have that going on, it's harder to exist. Because, I mean, we work for third-party vendors, so we have a little bit of work, but it's more on the commercial side. So now I need to focus on growing the residential side so people know that we're there and we're a smaller company. You know, we don't have to necessarily charge as much as these big companies, and we can come give you the same quality of work, you know?
You know, and here's what I tell you is, because you told me what you're charging, what y'all base your hourly rates on.
Right.
And my thought is, I remember the first time that I walked in and talked to one of my mentors who owns the biggest electrical company around. And I walked in, sat down, walked in to sit down and talk with him. And he told me, bring your price book. And he opened up my price book. And as soon as he opened the page, he said, you're not charging enough.
Right.
And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, because I know what it takes to run a business. I know what it takes to get the best plumber in. I know what it takes to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. He said, you're not making money. So, well, I'm making money, but I roll it all over into social media because we were growing it. He said, that's growth mode. He said, that doesn't bother me. He said, I don't care if you never pull a penny out of it.
Right.
He said, you're in growth mode. That's what you're rolling everything into marketing. He said, but you're not making enough profit, or else you could really pour more into that then if that's what you want to do.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, how much should I raise my price? He said, at least 25% right now.
Wow.
And I already knew that when I walked into the office, my CSR and my wife at the time are going to be like, there's no freaking way. We can't do it.
Right.
And, you know, when you set your prices, you've got to know, what would it cost for me to hire the best plumber in town?
Right.
The very best. And then you've got to know your multipliers to multiply that out. And you've got to know that, you know, your field labor, your office labor together should be about 30%. You've got 10% for marketing.
Right.
You've got another 17% for materials. And it gets down to where, look, there's only about 43% left over for profit and overhead, your building, your vehicles, your stuff like that.
Right.
So knowing your numbers and being able to sit down and look at them and say, gee, we're not priced right. We're not making enough money. But then to sit down and look at every job, know your KPIs. What numbers do you have to hit every day? How many, if you have 10 calls a day come in, how many of those have to convert to going out and sending a plumber out? When that plumber goes out, how many times a week, and then how many times does he close the deal?
Right.
And, you know, you've got to sit back and look at everything and know, hey, our plumbers need help. They're not closing enough calls. It means they're going out. They're not selling the value. But no plumber in town. And I mean, think about this when you first got into plumbing. Did you want to be the cheapest plumber in town?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
And a lot of companies start out building it based on this low charge out rate.
Right.
And when I walked in and talked to my mentor, literally he was probably 50% higher than I was.
Right.
Meaning take my number, add another 50%. That's where he was. And I finally talked my office. I think we ended up raising our price 15%.
Right.
Which helps.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
But it wasn't enough to put us in a better position. And then when I ended up selling the company, we ended up raising that price again, another 30 or 40%.
So you ended up closer to that number that
a lot closer to where he was, which this is a few years later. So by now his number's even higher.
Right. Right.
And, you know, you look at the way these companies are set up, and most stuff is set up on a cost, flat rate pricing, meaning, hey, we can come rebuild your toilet for $500,
Right.
you know, whatever the number is. And I'm just making stuff up, but to know that, and you know, your materials are in it, your labor's in it, your overhead's in it, your marketing is in it, everything in the world is in it.
Right.
Because if you're like, well, we can cut it 10%. Okay. You just cut out your marketing.
Yeah.
Your phone's not going to ring anymore.
No.
And that's the way to start looking at it. So, man, me later being able to coach people on it and teach them, look, do you know how this is supposed to be set up and what it's supposed to look like? Has been a really, really good deal. It's neat though to see a young plumber come in specializing in slab leaks, leak detection, location, stuff like that. I think that's huge. Tell me about the best day you've ever had in the field.
The best day I ever had, it was probably in Fairview, Texas, and I wasn't working for myself at the time. I was working for another company, and I did a slab leak detection, and it was on a main line. This house was massive.
I've been in Fairview, I know.
Yeah, and it's on a hill, white rock, the whole 9 yards. I went there because they kept having hot spots on this one loop that ran from the main it was the hall bathroom before it went upstairs and serviced all that stuff. This loop came across their whole walkway, went across their kitchen, and came up over there at the kitchen faucet. And they wanted that whole line replaced. They're like, I've had repairs here. They had electrolysis going on for some reason. And when I got down there, I found out why. There was two dissimilar metals touching. One of the, I guess it had to have happened from something that they had attached to the conduit. There was some other metal there because it was all corroded and flaked off. But so I cut that loop and I cut that loop, and man, that was the most profitable day I've ever seen as a plumber. Like it was just me by myself, cut and braze, roll that whole line out, cut and braze and sleeve it up, so that way it was protected. And yeah, that was definitely the best day that I've ever had. It was one of the easiest days too, but most profit wise, that was the best.
Cool.
I mean, the company, I'm pretty sure they made a lot on that day because I went and ran other calls after that. So it was a good day. But
tell me about the worst day, the biggest problem, the worst thing you've seen, the worst thing that happened.
The worst thing,
not just money.
The worst thing that I ever seen was there was a water leak that was so big that it looked like, how since they start off as a pinhole and then the pressure pushes it out to a cone, this leak looked like a 22 caliber bullet went through it. Like it was just completely opened up. And then the city came out and they shut the water off, and all the sand that was all saturated, when it dried up, it went into the line. So I spent the next day afterwards cleaning out all their fixtures. I had to take a piece of Silfloss and I had to bend the tip and start feeding it up the line that was going up into the concrete and pulling gobs of sand out of there, because it all, like, for somehow it sucked back up in there. And then when the water got kicked on, it went to all the fixtures. Like that was by far one of the worst days. Like,
that's rough.
Yeah, I had to explain to him what was going on, and it turned into a time-consuming thing. And then it was just bad under there. Oh my gosh, it was bad. The dirt was smelling. They had sewer leaks and stuff that I had to repair as well. So yeah, it was a crappy experience.
Man, that's a rough one. All right, so one more thing, but before I go to my final question, you purchased the leak detection equipment, the Leak Pro.
Yes, sir.
You've done leak detection for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the leak detection equipment?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. Like when I seen you do the demonstration video on YouTube, when you first started promoting it, and you ran your finger across the rod that, sends the sound up, I knew instantly from previous experience with a different company that, they have proprietary rights to their stuff. Yours sounded just like that. And I knew as soon as I heard that sound, this is the one that I want. And then that day I actually had a water leak locate, and I went and I was able to find it, and I could hear it clear as day. I could hear the TV in the other room, going through the floor.
Turn the TVs off. Brother.
Yeah, I usually do too, but when I could hear that, I knew this is what we needed to have. We definitely needed to add this to our company so that way we can compete in that market. So
you've used geophones before.
Yes, sir.
You've used the other company's proprietary equipment.
Yes, sir.
You've worked for another company that used something different.
Mm-hmm.
How do you compare Leak Pro to those?
Leak Pro is top tier. They're right up there with the company that has proprietary rights to their stuff. Y'all have dialed in the sound the way that it's supposed to reflect, and it's able to go to the headphones. I mean, it's neck and neck. It's right there. It's what every company should have, so that way they can compete in that market. And then, I mean, y'all made it to where it's just you turn it on, and as long as you went through your steps, you did your points test, you know where the two loudest points are, and then you traced out that line so you can profile exactly where you're supposed to be listening, you're going to get on top of the leak.
And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are like, well, I hear it here, I hear it here. I'm just going to listen right here. And it may curve. It could be.
It could do different things. You open it up and it's dry.
And there's no pop there.
Exactly. That's the crazy thing. I mean, not tracing stuff that is traceable. Why would you do that to yourself? Like if the system is PEX and you can't trace it, I understand why you may have tried to market that way. That makes things way more difficult when there's no way to, trace the signal on the pipe. But if it is traceable, man, you should trace it. Like it's just an essential part to doing it.
Do you ever push a wire through PEX to locate it?
I've done that before.
Yeah. No, I have too, and that's why.
Yeah, you have to convince the homeowner, hey, I got to open up your wall right here. We'll put a access panel back, but I got to start trying to trace those plastic lines.
I'm not going to put an access panel. I tell them you'll have to call a sheetrock person. We don't fix your walls. You don't want your sheetrock guy fixing your plumbing.
Yeah.
You call them to fix it, and you'll be good.
I mean, it's definitely, I've done that as well. I just started doing the access panel because now I have a way to cover it. And then I just let them know, like, hey, if you don't want that there, I understand, but at least now it's covered and I have an access point in the future. You know, a lot of people, the aesthetics, they don't like it. I understand completely, but utility wise for a plumber, it's great, you know, to be able to re-access the same area.
Oh, no, I agree. You saw the training center we built. You didn't need it. You've been training on this for years.
Yes, sir.
What'd you think of the training center?
I think it's definitely something that people that don't have the type of experience that I have, they should take full advantage of it. Because if you don't, you're just hurting yourself. Knowledge is power. You know, like a lot of people, like I've noticed, especially with plumbers, they get comfortable with wherever they are. They don't want to grow. They don't want to adjust. And I understand, you know, different strokes for different folks. But if you're one of those people that has a desire to keep learning, keep doing it. It's only going to help you. It's
Absolutely.
it's going to help your customers. It's going to increase your, you know, the money that you're bringing in, and they're going to call you back.
Yep.
You know, like when people say, hey, no, I got a plumber. I'm like, hey, that's cool. I understand completely. You know, this is what he's going to need to do. Just let him know this is what I found. And then you go from there, you know, type of deal. And I mean, I respect that because that means that that person, whoever it is, they did a good enough job to where now that person, that's their person. You know, they're going to call that company and, hey, it is what it is.
Good
I mean,
stuff.
that's what I hope I can do for myself, you know? So I respect it 100%, you know, I just let them know, hey, just let me know what's going on. And I honestly used to get a lot of people, oh, my plumber doesn't want to do it. When can you schedule? Oh, great. You know, because I would do the whole thing. Once I have a customer, I'll start calling them back. Hey, how you doing? You know, have you gotten this figured out? Do you need us to set something up for us? You know, you are attentive to their needs, you know, and a lot of people do that. And then there's a lot that don't. And I know that there's a great disparity in their business volume from the ones that do and the ones that don't. So,
Okay. What about the case it comes in?
I love that because it's protected. Man, that bad boy is strong and durable. And I mean, the equipment is so sensitive that you need to protect it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's durable, but you don't want nothing to happen to it. So that case is perfect. Everything slides in there, latches up, you know, you can put it in your truck or van, whatever.
You got to worry about it.
And it's clean. It's clean, protected, and that's what matters.
Good. Go back to when you were in high school. You get out. Monday, you wake up, you're headed to work, headed to college, headed out. If you could go back now and meet little Kyle as he walks out the door, what advice would you give him based on what you know now?
Get into plumbing. Get into plumbing. Do it as soon as possible. Get into the trades of some sort. But I would have definitely, like the younger version of myself, I would have probably told him, hey, man, you need to pull your head out your ass and you need to go do this, because the sooner you do it, the better, the more likely of success you're going to have. You know, you got to have some type of direction. And I definitely would have tried to force feed myself plumbing just because of what is given to me. And I mean, the unique skills that I've learned and I've been able to grow as a person, as a man, you know, and be proud of something in my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's what plumbing represents. I had no idea in the world that this is where I was going to be, but I tell you what, I'm not mad about it, you know, because it's a unique thing. There's a lot of nuance in plumbing. There's so many different things you can do. New construction service, you know, like you were talking about med gas, all that stuff, fire protection, sprinkler systems. There's just an endless amount of things that comes to plumbing that is so useful in everyday functions that, you know, I would have definitely force-fed myself to go into plumbing. I promise you that. Like, I never even thought about it up there, you know, and I'd be in the basements because they have basements. So you see the sewer lines, you see the water lines, and never thought about how much that goes into everyday life.
I love that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, bro.
You're welcome.